Cottonwood Bayou all the way down to Panther Point. If you have the opportunity to be on the water this past week, then you may have noticed that we have a tremendous amount of extra water in our systems right now. We have a big old bull tide that has pushed up in here from all the big winds that we've had over the last couple of weeks. So it's pushed a lot of extra water in here for us. So it has really opened up a lot of fishing area, and at the same time, it has scattered a lot of fish. When we had our lower tides and negative tides there for a little while, the fish kind of get concentrated, and you can locate them a lot easier and a lot faster. But once we've gotten all this water in here, man, there's like, here we go. We get to go out wherever we want to go to right now. So we really spend a lot of time working shorelines, edges, not too terribly much. Even some of the back lakes, we got into those. That's the great thing about that. Some of the back lakes have not been really accessible unless you had a really skinny boat or an airboat. But now that this amount of water we've had here, so you can get just about any kind of boat back in some of these areas right now, and we took advantage of that. So along this shoreline here, you've got the back lakes. You got, like I say, you got Cottonwood there, and you got the Shell Reef that's back up in there, the bayou. We got back up in that one a couple of times. Really good opportunities, but everything was pushed up against the shorelines and maybe working 20 to 30 yards out away from that. So that was kind of our target points and areas in lots of these places. Panther Point on this outer edge out here with lots of shell. We found a few fish there, but like I say, with the extra water there, it's kind of made it a little bit more difficult to fish. It made it much deeper to fish, so we didn't really focus as much on it just to see if there were fish that were hanging out there. We caught a few, not a tremendous amount. Once the water kind of drops back out a little bit, it'll probably normalize and those fish will push back out there on it. But we spend a lot of time on the inside here on the lake side, back here in Swan on the back side of it here. And again, pushing everything up against the shorelines, working those types of areas and primarily over pretty much hard packed ground. Grass, again, grass is the common denominator no matter what time of year it is. But that's, as long as you got some grass working in there and you're over the right type of structure, some scattered shell. Again, a lot of these fish are starting to show up over these shell reefs. So if you're a reef fisherman or you like to fish those, then those are going to be areas that you're really going to want to kind of focus on here for the next couple of months because you will get your opportunities. But like I say, we're still kind of focusing. We're catching the trout in there, but we're catching more redfish as well. I mean, that's kind of what our target point is right now, and in locating. So, but there's not big numbers, but we're working those areas like that. We find them back in the back lakes. We find them down these shorelines in these little mouths, little cuts and guts and stuff like that. So, primarily thing that we were throwing were the original size down south in like watermelon red, big papa, twisted tea, bone diamond, white ice. Though a lot of those particular flavors, mud minnow has still been in the burner shad size, has been very good for us. We're in a new moon phase now, so really if you get the opportunity to take advantage of that, please do so. It should give you great opportunities over the next several days here, probably the next 6 to 8 days. You should have some pretty good fishing days out on the water, no matter where you're fishing. But these are the kind of the areas that we've been locating and been finding fish on consistently. 16th ounce jig heads, in the knock and tail, it's the same culprits as always. We've been throwing the Rogue, greenback, heavy metal, have been the main flavors that we have thrown there. Have sprinkled in some pearl with that as well. It's done pretty good. Water clarity has held pretty well until we get, bigger days when we got our winds that are kicking once we're afternoon getting there. So you get kind of dirtied up. So you kind of take advantage of that. And of course, you can just change your course to the more solid flavors and throw it in that dirtier water. And of course, that's where the knock and tail, and maybe even if you want to throw it underneath the poppy cork and let it work off of that, it can be pretty productive for you as well. But again, like I say, working these shorelines, working these little mouths to these little back lakes, little sloughs has been very good for us. Get back in Cottonwood and work all this back in here. Like I say, with the amount of water that's in here right now, it's all opens it way up for us. Then back up in here in these areas here in the Shell Reef Bayou area, all this back here against shorelines. Some areas around the little spoil out, or not spoil islands, but just regular little islands that are out in the middle of it. We've been working around those and finding some fish there. But that's kind of been our areas, and that's kind of been the targets, no matter whether we're fishing up in this area, if we're fishing down further south. But that's what we've targeted. All the flavors that I had mentioned earlier have been very good for us. They've been pretty consistent. Topwater bite has been pretty good as well. not super fast and furious, but we got several opportunities with our topwater bait. So if you want to throw a regular size topwater on, throwing the Spook Junior or the She Dog has been good for us. Lele, we didn't throw it as much, just kind of stuck with our traditional topwater baits and had some pretty good opportunities throwing those in that time frame. So just kind of depends on what you really want to do. Multiple different species of fish. We've caught some black drum in there. We've caught scattered flounder here and there. Of course, caught several trout, but a lot of those are in that 14 to 15 range. We've caught a handful or so that've been in that new slot, and that's 17, 18s has been pretty solid. And of course, our redfish have been anywhere from 18 to 24 inches, and with every once in a while we'll get an upper slot red in there. But those are the kind of things that you want, especially if you're throwing a topwater bait. Those are a lot of fun to get an opportunity with. So work these areas really well and take your time with those. Again, majors and minors have been our main key points with our fishing days. We really kind of set our day up so we can be in one of these really good areas like that. Bait is not a problem whatsoever. Lots of these areas got tons and tons of bait on it. But especially if you get back in these protected areas like the back lakes or on these shorelines here on that south side, you're protected from that southeast breeze. So just kind of take your time, working areas really well. Be patient with it. Enjoy your time out there on the water. This whole backside of Mud Island, all the way down from Blind Pass, all the way up here to the point. Again, much more water in our system. Lots of these areas have lit up. Lots of opportunities that are back here in the big lake there. And you got a bunch of little back lakes that are just further down. They're all back up in these areas back here. You can just kind of walk in, wade to these areas. You can get your boat into some of these areas because of the amount of water that's in there. So take advantage of that. When you see those, that's really important for you to check your tides because, man, it's been great with this much water that's been there. Some people like it real low. Some people like it high. I just like there to be lots of options to get a lot of different places. Yeah, it takes a little bit more time to locate your fish, but you're getting in areas that you haven't been in a little bit. So take advantage of that. So these little flat areas that are here off of the backside of Mud, and of course up there Blind Pass, this area here, and you can work all this out here. Fish are starting to show up on the outside as well. All these areas here, of course, you got your southeast breeze. You're protected on this side frame here, all the way back down to the point that's outside here. You've got lots of grass. You got lots of different undulations in the bottom, good hard packed bottom that's out there. Just work these areas really well. We're just throwing our regular plastics out there. Primarily, throwing the original burner shad and sprinkling in some of the mirror lure, either Little Johns or provokers in there. The supermodel from down south in multiple flavors that I mentioned earlier. Big Papa, Purple Rain, any of those, Twisted Tea, greenbacks from the Knock and Tail, the heavy metal. Any of that kind of stuff has been just fine. It hadn't been really any one particular thing that's really stood out. We've had a lot of different baits on there, and we've caught a lot of fish with a lot of different kinds of baits. So profile-wise, we're in the transition days, so there was a few days that were kind of sprinkled in there that were a little bit difficult, so we had to really kind of figure some stuff out. But once you kind of got that pattern in place, you kind of got on them and you started catching them. So, again, with the new moon in play that's happening right now, you should have some great opportunities on the water in some of these areas. Wherever you choose that you want to fish, this is just one of them that just gives you another option. You can get back in there and work. Again, we've been working the shoreline, working out in the middle a little bit, but most of the fish we've been catching with this elevated tides that we've had is coming off the shoreline edges like that because you got a lot more water that's pushed in there. And again, bait's not a problem whatsoever. Got plenty of food source in there for you. So anywhere that you really kind of want to work, if you're wanting to work a windward side, if you want to work a leeward side of these islands, you can get there and you have options. Our water temps pushing 80 right now. We've had some 81 degree days out on the water temps itself, so it's been really comfortable. So wet wading is in full swing, so that's a really nice thing. You don't have to be in the waders anymore. But take advantage, man. Get out here and work these areas really, really well. Again, majors and minors has been the key focus for us to set our fishing day up for these particular areas. Again, just if you got multiple people that's going to be fishing with you, then just put different profile baits on. Somebody put a supermodel on to a original, to a burner, to even a 6-inch if you got. There's a couple of different bait companies that are out there right now that have got that little bit more whippy style tail, real similar to what a provoker is. So check those out and use those if you want. So you got a lot of different options. You're not really kind of limited to stuff. So it's really a good time right now. So take advantage if you can. Like I say, though, big winds, make sure you're preparing for that kind of stuff, depending on where you're setting your day up. Make sure that you plan your day out pretty well and stick to that plan as much as you can. Have multiple different opportunity or multiple locations. It gives you opportunities based on what's going on. If one place is not producing for you, you have another that's close proximity that you can work and get to that area pretty close and not burn a lot of time. So, but lots of fish to be had out there. Fishing has been great. Catching's been even better. So just do your best to be able to get on the water. And if you're able to take advantage of these time frames, then you will have some very productive days. Swan Lake area. It has been pretty good. Again, elevated tides. We've got a lot of opportunities pushed up against the shoreline. You know, the middle out here in Swan, when we got this much water in there, it's a little bit difficult to fish. You have to probably fish it from the boat. But, like I say, most of our fish that we've been catching is coming from shoreline 20 to 30 yards out, which is still in that, you know, waist deep, belly deep water at most. Bottom has been very good. You know, it's if you fish this back here or weighted, it's not super mushy at all. It's pretty solid for the most part. Get a little squishiness here and there, but all this area back in here has been very good for us. We've worked out even out here on this flat that's typically really skinny. It's, you know, it's had knee-deep water on it, some thigh-deep on some days, so it's been very good as well. So we've just kind of really concentrated all these types of areas like that around the little islands, working the outside of them, working in between there, and the guts, the mouths of those have been good. We've caught a lot of trout off of these areas and been some pretty decent trouts, you know, some 16 to 18s, which is pretty solid for the most part, especially with the new slot size. So it hadn't taken very long if you were keeping fish to get your 3 fish per. So just another great little location, little area to kind of target for you. You know, you've got the oyster farm that's out there, and there's been a few boats that's kind of focused on in and around that are throwing some baits that are out there. Obviously, you can't wade around that. It's just too deep to do it. But, you know, we've been working the shoreline edges that are out here in these mouths, the little guts that are in between the islands, on the outside here on the bay side. All these areas here, you know, more grass has showed up. It's been very good, which, like I said earlier, grass is the common denominator for us no matter what time of the year it is. So these fish, trout-wise, they're really starting to push up on these grass. So that's why I mentioned that to you, because if you're wanting to target some trout, then that's where your fish are going to be. You find your good old grassy flat that's got some great potholes and some little deep water access that's adjacent to it somewhere, you're going to give yourself an opportunity. So again, multiple different baits we've been throwing. We threw all 3 sizes, including the new bait that Down South has. It's called the Big Smooth. It's another great bait that Mr. Bossy has put out there on the market for you. So if you haven't gotten a bag of those, trot on by to Tackle Town and see if you can't pick you some up. So it's a terrific bait, especially using it during this time frame, the big springtime, where this is where you'll typically find your better trout, heavier trout anyway. It gives you that opportunity. Like I said, we've thrown all 4 sizes, the Supermodel, the Big Smooth, the original, and the burners, and caught fish on all of them. So there's really been no definite pattern. It's like this or that, but it's been a majority of things. And again, in the knock and tail, their 4-inch version in the same flavors as mentioned earlier. Marker 54, you know, we got the shrimp that are being shrimped out in the bay. So you got your white shrimp. So you can throw those jerk shrimp on there if you want to and work those in and around those edges. Shell, like I say, fish are showing up on shell bars and shell reefs right now. So really take advantage of that if you can. And of course, Marker 54 has that new paddle tail that's been a very good bait for you. Well, so you don't have to do a whole lot with it. It's pretty easy to work. You don't have to have a whole lot of skill set. Just cast it and reel it and wait for the results to happen for you. So, but again, of course, in the mirror lures as well, Little Johns and Provokers have been all right. And, of course, the topwater baits that I mentioned earlier have been good. Or if you got a topwater bait that you like, chunk it. You'll have some opportunities with it, and that's the main thing that you're really looking for. Is we're just looking for those opportunities. But work these edges, work these outside edge, work the inside edge of these. Some of the backside of these islands are a little bit mushier, and you might want to stay away from that right now, especially with the water temps being what they are. If we start to lose some water, which is at some point it's going to drop back out for us. So that's when your middle of these places will kind of work out and will start to show up for you, and you can be there. But anyway, edges along the shoreline edge, majors and minors, really focus on those time frames. That's when we've caught the majority of our fish. Scratched some out in between those bite frames, but that's when you're going to get your opportunities. So again, pay attention to what your weather patterns are and pay attention to those tides so you can help eliminate water for yourself and don't waste time getting into areas that you really can't find any fish.